3:45 a.m. The Zagros mountain range, western Iran. Along a valley floor concealed by ridgelines rising 3,000 meters on either side, 47 mobile transporter erector launchers had been repositioned over the previous 72 hours. Satellite windows had been calculated. The gaps between U.S. reconnaissance passes had been mapped to the minute. For months, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Aerospace Force had prepared for this moment with the same industrial patience that had characterized 3 decades of missile program development. At 3:45 a.m., the first Fateh 313 ignited. The solid fuel motor produced 470 kilonewtons of thrust in under 0.4 seconds. The plume rose above the ridgeline, visible from 200 kilometers as an orange column against the black mountain silhouette. Before the first missile cleared the ridge, the second had already ignited. Then 4 more in rapid sequence. Within 90 seconds, 14 separate launch complexes across the Zagros Valley system were active simultaneously. This was not a probe. This was not a demonstration. The IRGC had committed its full operational reserve. 214 missiles were airborne within 11 minutes. 62 Fateh 313 solid fuel ballistic missiles, range 500 kilometers. 47 Imad medium-range ballistic missiles, each fitted with an improved terminal guidance package. 38 Shahab 3 variants carrying heavier payloads. 41 Hovizeh ground-launched cruise missiles flying at terrain-following altitude between 50 and 200 meters, designed to defeat radar by operating below the horizon. 26 Noor anti-ship missiles pre-staged at Bandar Abbas and Jask, aimed at the carrier strike group in the northern Persian Gulf. Designated targets: Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, Al Dhafra Air Base in the UAE, the carrier group's operating position, Camp Arifjan in Kuwait. 214 weapons, 11 minutes of launch activity. The IRGC had bet everything on a single premise. The logic was analytically coherent. A saturation salvo of 200-plus missiles, incorporating low-altitude cruise missiles alongside multi-band ballistic trajectories, was modeled to exceed the simultaneous engagement capacity of any single Aegis warship. A Ticonderoga-class cruiser carries 122 VLS cells. An Arleigh Burke carries 96. Against 214 inbound weapons, individual platform capacity would be overwhelmed. This was not incorrect reasoning. A single Aegis ship, operating in isolation, would have been overwhelmed. What the IRGC's model had not fully weighted was cooperative engagement capability, the architecture that allowed multiple Aegis platforms to share targeting data in real time, enabling one ship's radar to feed a firing solution to another ship's interceptors. Under CEC, the 5 Aegis platforms in theater did not function as 5 separate systems. They functioned as one distributed sensor shooter network with combined VLS capacity, exceeding 500 cells. The IRGC had identified a real vulnerability in individual platform capacity. It had underestimated the degree to which the network had been engineered to eliminate that vulnerability entirely. The gap between the IRGC's model and the operational reality was approximately 47 SM-3 interceptors. There was also the political calculation. U.S. authorization for full-scale response would require between 45 and 90 minutes. A Patriot battery at Al Udeid was at reduced readiness following a rotation 3 weeks prior, correctly identified through agent reporting. The carrier group had conducted 5 consecutive days of high-intensity operations and was assessed to be temporarily capacity-constrained. Every pillar of the assessment was partially correct. None of them accounted for the depth of what was coming. 7 seconds after first ignition, the space-based infrared system satellite in geosynchronous orbit over the Persian Gulf detected the first thermal signature within 5 seconds of ignition, before the missile cleared the ridgeline. Within seconds, the system had correlated 17 distinct thermal events and transmitted the initial launch notification to the ground processing station at Buckley Space Force Base in Colorado. The infrared analyst on duty had been monitoring this sector for 14 months. She was 27 years old. In those months, she had processed more than 2,000 routine thermal events: aircraft engines, industrial flares, natural gas burn-off from western Iranian oil fields. At that moment, her console showed 17 simultaneous thermal signatures across a 40-kilometer band in the Zagros mountain region. Simultaneous ignition, multiple separated grid references, thermal intensity matching solid fuel ballistic motor combustion profiles. She pressed the alert confirmation. The fastest previous activation in this sector was 2.4 seconds. Her confirmation took 2.0. Within 60 seconds, NORAD, CENTCOM, the 5th Fleet Operations Center in Bahrain, and the carrier flag bridge had all received the initial launch notification. Time to impact calculation for the earliest arrivals at Al Udeid: 22 minutes. By 3:47 a.m., 90 seconds after the first motor ignition in the Zagros, U.S. command networks had begun activating the response sequence. Aegis ships entered engagement protocol. THAAD batteries received targeting packages. B-2 Spirit bombers on alert at Diego Garcia received preliminary tasking orders. 11 submarines pre-positioned in the Gulf of Oman received their first targeting coordinate packages. The adversary's missiles had been airborne for 90 seconds. The response had already started. The intercept geometry was managed in layers, each calibrated to a specific threat envelope, each designed to feed into the next. 3 Aegis cruisers and 2 destroyers, networked under CEC, began engaging Ahmad and Shahab, 3 ballistic trajectories during their mid-course phase, 140 kilometers above the Earth's surface, where the SM-3 Block 2A had the most favorable intercept geometry. By 3:51 a.m., 67 SM-3 launches had been executed across the 5 platforms. Under CEC, one ship's radar tracked the inbound, while another ship with a better firing angle executed the intercept. The system processed all 214 tracks simultaneously, prioritized by trajectory data and time to impact, and assigned interceptors at a speed no human targeting team could match. At 3:52 a.m., Track 0047, an EMAD, executed a terminal maneuver at 80 kilometers altitude, shifting its trajectory 12 degrees. The first SM-3 missed by 340 meters. In near vacuum, 340 meters is a clean miss. The network reassigned in 1.4 seconds. A second SM-3 from a different platform intercepted track 0047 at 3:53 a.m. The maneuver had required 2 missiles where one was planned. The system absorbed that friction without pause. The THAAD battery at Al Dhafra entered the engagement at 3:54 a.m. against the shorter-range Fateh 313 missiles in their terminal phase. 12 intercepts in 4 minutes. THAAD's fire control system was operating at 94% of theoretical maximum engagement rate. The Hovizeh cruise missiles were a different problem. 41 terrain-following weapons at 50 to 200 meters altitude were largely invisible to SM-3 mid-course geometry. They required different sensors and a different layer. The E-3 Sentry AWACS orbiting south of Kuwait detected the cruise missile tracks at 3:53 a.m., returns partially masked by terrain clutter, but identifiable by persistent heading and speed profiles inconsistent with civilian air traffic. AWACS data fed simultaneously into Patriot Pass 3 batteries and into the FA-18 Combat Air Patrol already airborne from the carrier. That patrol had been airborne since 3:04 a.m., standard practice during the heightened threat status in effect for 9 days. 4 FA-18F Super Hornets were vectored toward the cruise missile packages from the northwest. Between 3:56 a.m. and 4:04 a.m., the FA-18 flights neutralized 19 of the 41 Hovizeh missiles at ranges between 30 and 90 kilometers. The remaining 22 were handed to PAC-3. At 4:03 a.m., the Patriot battery commander at Al Udeid watched his console track 11 simultaneous inbound signatures converging from 3 vectors. His battery had 48 PAC-3 MSE interceptors and a single designated mission. Protect 3.4 kilometers of runway, representing the theater's most critical air logistics node. He needed to be selective. His battery fired its first interceptor at 4:03 a.m. 4 Fateh 313 missiles had penetrated the outer layers. PAC-3 was the final intercept option. 3 were neutralized between 4:04 and 4:05 a.m. The fourth, Track 0091, produced a proximity detonation rather than a direct hit. The warhead was disrupted, but not fully neutralized. Fragments impacted the Al-Udeid northern taxiway at 4:05 a.m., a 6-meter crater, 1 severed fuel line. 1 Air Force ground crew member sustained injuries from the fragment impact. The taxiway was non-operational for 4 hours. Al-Udeid's primary runway remained intact. 214 weapons launched. 1 taxiway. 1 fuel line. 1 injured service member. 4:07 a.m. USS Gettysburg, Aegis cruiser, northern edge of the defensive envelope, had expended 79 SM-3 and SM-6 interceptors in 19 minutes. Her VLS was at 12% remaining capacity. 14 cells of 116 total. The combat systems officer transmitted the threshold immediately. The CEC network redistributed Gettysburg's remaining assignments across 3 other platforms with surplus capacity in 4.2 seconds. During those 4.2 seconds, Track 0134, an EMAD on terminal trajectory toward the carrier's position, was momentarily unassigned. It was reassigned and engaged by an SM-6 from USS Monterey at 97% of the SM-6's maximum effective range envelope. Modeled intercept probability at that range, 71%. For 11 seconds, as the SM-6 tracked toward its solution, the outcome was genuinely unresolved. The intercept succeeded. But a 29% probability of failure is not a number a carrier group carries lightly. The system was deep, but depth under sufficient pressure can be measured. 4:02 a.m. While the defense was still processing the inbound salvo, Operation Iron Register was already executing. In the 16 minutes between first launch detection and the first counter-strike weapon release, 347 aim points had been assigned across 189 separate Iranian military installations. Each aim point had been matched to a specific weapon system based on target hardness, underground facility depth, collateral distance, and required effect. The targeting cycle that had required 6 weeks of preparation in the Gulf War had been executed by automated assignment algorithms at the Combined Air Operations Center, TAR, with human operators reviewing and confirming rather than building from scratch. The Tomahawk packages launched first. 11 submarines, 9 SSNs and 2 SSGNs, pre-positioned in the Gulf of Oman, received their firing orders. The first BGM-109E launches were confirmed at 4:02 a.m. Within 6 minutes, 127 Tomahawks were in flight, routing at low altitude toward Iranian coastal facilities, airbase complexes, and the SAM network. By minute 22 of the engagement, the United States had expended $1.4 billion in precision munitions. The invoice was still climbing. 2B-2 Spirit aircraft airborne from Diego Garcia since 11 p.m. received their finalized strike packages at 4:08 a.m. Each carried a combination of GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrators for hardened underground facilities and GBU-31 JDAM for surface targets. B-2 routing had been pre-calculated to exploit the gaps in Iranian air defense radar coverage that the electronic suppression phase was simultaneously widening. Carrier surge operations began at 4:05 a.m. On the flight deck, under red lighting that preserved night vision while permitting safe operations, aircraft moved through a choreography drilled to mechanical precision. Ordnance crews cycled weapons from below-deck storage to flight deck staging, keeping arming time under 9 minutes per aircraft. Steam catapults launched an aircraft every 68 seconds. The heat from jet exhaust at 4 a.m. created shimmer effects visible to the topside crew even in darkness. By 4:18 a.m., 67 strike aircraft were airborne from the carrier alone. 4 EA-18G Growlers launched before the strike package, each carrying the AN/ALQ-99 jamming system and AARG-MER anti-radiation missiles. They entered Iranian radar coverage margins at 4:12 a.m. Their function was electromagnetic first, kinetic second. Active jamming reduced Iranian radar operators' screens to noise, degrading SAM fire control accuracy across the southern coastal region. The first AARGM-ER launched at 4:14 a.m. against an S-300 PMU-2 fire control radar northeast of Bushehr. The AARGMER's home-on-jam guidance followed the radar's own emissions to the source. The operator had 4 seconds of warning. 3 of 4 S-300 batteries in the southern coastal region lost fire control radar capability within 6 minutes. The 4th battery went passive. It stopped emitting, rendering the AARGMER's seeker ineffective. A passive radar at a known position was still a threat. The Growler flight commander flagged the coordinates for kinetic resolution. A JASM-IR from a B-1B Lancer at standoff range was reassigned to the grid at 4:19 a.m. and impacted at 4:31 a.m. Each JASM-R carries a unit cost of $1.36 million. 47 were in flight simultaneously across the Zagros target zone during the peak engagement window. $63.9 million of U.S. precision munitions in the same airspace at the same time, each navigating independently to a pre-assigned aim point. U.S. cybercom operations targeting Iranian military command networks had been active since 3:59 a.m., disrupting fiber and microwave relay nodes connecting IRGC command centers to their launch site network. By 4:15 a.m., IRGC communications were estimated at 40% of normal capacity. Messages arriving late, some failing to arrive at all. Regional commanders receiving fragmented updates with no coherent operational picture. 4:20 a.m. The first Tomahawks reached Iranian coastal facilities. The Noor anti-ship battery at Bandar Abbas, which had launched 26 missiles at the carrier group, was the highest coastal priority. Its reload capability was the only remaining Iranian system with direct reach to the carrier's operating area. 4 Tomahawks arriving within a 40-second window rendered the launcher infrastructure inoperable. The JASC naval facility received a 6 Tomahawk package timed for near-simultaneous impact from 2 approach vectors, designed to prevent asset movement between impacts. At 4:24 a.m., the first IRGC missile base in the Zagros mountain region was engaged. Tomahawks targeted surface-level infrastructure, fuel storage, logistics buildings, TEL shelter entrances. JASSMERS from the B-1B. Lancers followed against hardened equipment shelters and command structures. The Fordo facility required a different category of approach. Fordow's primary operational area sat 80 meters below a mountain surface, reinforced with an estimated 8 meters of concrete overhead. Conventional munitions could not reach operational depth. The GBU-57 Massive Ordnance Penetrator, 30,000 pounds, designed specifically for targets of this classification, was the only non-nuclear system assessed to have a probability of achieving effect at that depth. The B-2 carrying the Fordo package arrived at its release point at 4:38 a.m. The first GBU-57 was released at 4:38 a.m. At Mach 1.5 terminal velocity, it penetrated the mountain overburden. A seismograph station at Kashan, 180 kilometers away, registered a 2.3 magnitude event moments later. There was a complication. The B-2's weapons bay door experienced an 11-second delay in its hydraulic release actuator. At 500 miles per hour, 11 seconds is 2.4 kilometers of additional distance traveled. The second weapon release required a manual geometry correction. The aircrew computed the offset. The second GBU-57 released at 4:39 a.m., a 2.1 magnitude event on the same seismograph. 2 weapons, 1 manual intervention, 42 additional seconds. The system had adapted and continued. By 4:35 a.m., 32 of Iran's 41 catalogued SAM sites had lost fire control radar capability. 9 remained in various operational or passive states. Strike aircraft routing minimized exposure and engaged the remaining sites sequentially as they activated. At 4:41 a.m., an F/A-18F from the carrier strike package was engaged by a previously uncharted mobile SAM system south of Isfahan. A Khordad 15, not listed in the pre-strike intelligence assessment at that grid reference. The pilot executed a defensive break. His wingman fired an AIM-120D to engage the launcher. As the wingman completed the suppression maneuver, the Khordad 15 interceptor detonated in proximity to his left engine nacelle. The pilot assessed the aircraft as non-flyable and ejected at 4:42 a.m., 12,000 feet altitude, 180 kilometers inside Iranian territory. A combat search and rescue package had been standing by since the operation began. The emergency beacon was received at 4:42 a.m., 4:33 a.m. The IRGC command network had been receiving fragmented damage reports for 28 minutes. What had begun as a coordinated mass strike had become a cascade of failures arriving faster than they could be processed. Site after site going dark. The Aerospace Force commander, receiving updates through degraded backup channels, was looking at an operational picture that bore no resemblance to the wargame projection. The IRGC held a reserve. 22 medium-range ballistic missiles with terminal maneuvering re-entry vehicles, a capability U.S. intelligence had assessed as existent but lower probability for the opening phase. The commander authorized the reserve at 4:33 a.m. The targeting doctrine had changed. The reserve was not aimed at the original military target set. The IRGC had shifted to civilian economic infrastructure, the Manama Causeway approach in Bahrain and the Jebel Ali port facility in Dubai. The intent was to demonstrate that the U.S. response had not removed the IRGC's ability to impose regional costs. SBIRS detected the reserve launch at 4:34 a.m. The revised targeting was identified within 4 minutes through trajectory analysis, vectors geometrically inconsistent with military target coordinates and consistent with the port facilities. The intercept priority was elevated to maximum. The information was simultaneously transmitted to CENTCOM and to the diplomatic back-channel maintained open since 3:47 a.m. 3 SM-3 launches engaged the leading edge of the reserve package at 4:38 a.m. 19 of 22 missiles were intercepted. 2 were neutralized by PAC-3 in Bahrain at terminal phase. 1 impacted in open water 1.4 kilometers from the Jebel Ali outer breakwater. No structural damage. 0 personnel impact. 95.5% intercept rate on the reserve. The IRGC's final operational action had not achieved its military objective. Its targeting intent, civilian infrastructure, had been documented and transmitted through every diplomatic and intelligence channel within minutes of identification. 4:47 a.m. The IRGC Aerospace Force's primary command center had lost external communications at 4:19 a.m. Its backup relay was rendered inoperable at 4:31 a.m. Regional command facilities at Isfahan and Tabriz had been progressively isolated as microwave relay infrastructure was systematically engaged. By 4:47 a.m., the last functioning link between the National Command Authority in Tehran and operational forces in the field was a commercial satellite phone being used by a regional commander to relay fragmented reports that could not be cross-referenced against any other source. The IRGC had not surrendered. Its leadership remained in place, but it had ceased to function as a coordinated military force. Its command network was no longer a network. It was a collection of isolated nodes, each receiving no information from any other node. each unable to transmit orders through channels that no longer existed. The silence was not the product of a single decisive engagement. It was the cumulative result of 41 separate disruption events: kinetic, cyber, and electronic, each individually manageable, collectively terminal for the network's coherence. The adversary had not been removed from the field. It had been systematically disconnected from itself. 4:52 a.m. The Combined Air Operations Center, Udeid. The strike assessment display updated in real time as post-strike sensor data processed through the targeting network. The colonel responsible for the 189 aim point target list watched status icons change from yellow, engaged, assessment pending, to green, confirmed effect, installation rendered inoperable. He had spent 11 months building that list. Compiled from satellite imagery, signals intelligence, human reporting, and open-source analysis accumulated across 3 years of contingency planning. Revised 43 times. Finalized 9 days before the IRGC launched. The confirmations populated in clusters. Green, 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 green. At 4:52 a.m., 151 of 189 cataloged installations had confirmed assessments. 38 remained pending, primarily in the hardened mountain complex category, where battle damage assessment required more time than the operation's immediate timeline allowed. He saved the assessment file, walked to the water station in the corner of the operations floor, stood there without moving for approximately 40 seconds. He had spent 11 months building what the network had executed in 61 minutes. The machine had completed its primary sequence. It was not celebrating. It was processing what it had done. Time from first launch detection to completion of primary counter-operation sequence. 61 minutes. Adversary missiles launched. Primary wave, 214. Intercepted or neutralized before structural impact, 210. Intercept rate, 98.1%. Physical impacts on defended positions. 1. Fragment strike on Udeid northern taxiway, 6-meter crater, 1 fuel line severed. Primary runway, unaffected. Reserve package launched, 22. Intercepted, 21. 1 water impact. Jebel Ali approach zone, 0 structural effect. Counter-operation munitions deployed. 127 Tomahawk cruise missiles. 47 JASSM-ER. 6 GBU 57 MOP. 112 JDAM and small diameter bombs. 22 AARGM-ER. Carrier air wing precision releases. 318 additional munitions. Total munitions cost, approximately $2.3 billion. Adversary installations confirmed rendered inoperable. 151 of 189 cataloged. 38 pending final assessment. IRGC Aerospace Force missile operational inventory reduction. 74% of assessed ready stock. Coastal naval defense, reduced below operational threshold. Air defense network. 32 of 41 SAM sites confirmed inoperable. U.S. assets, 1F/A-18F, rendered inoperable by proximity detonation from uncharted mobile SAM, south of Isfahan. Aircrew recovered by CSAR at 5:14 a.m., minor injuries. 1 ground crew member at Udeid, non-life-threatening fragment injuries. USS Gettysburg, VLS, at 12% remaining capacity. Replenishment scheduled. Tomahawk magazine, 127 of approximately 215 available expended. Full reload estimated 60 to 90 days. The adversary's first strike inventory, 14 years and an estimated $8.7 billion in development and procurement, was operationally expended in 11 minutes of launch activity. The United States expended $2.3 billion to respond to it. The adversary's total military infrastructure loss was assessed at an approximate replacement value of $14.1 billion, with a reconstruction timeline the present condition of the Iranian defense industrial base could not support. One pilot recovered from a mountainside with minor injuries. One 6-meter taxiway crater repaired in 4 hours. The response cost $2.3 billion. The adversary needed 14 years to build what 61 minutes dismantled. That asymmetry was not about money. It was not about the weapons themselves. It was about the depth of a system built over 30 years of incremental investment in exactly this scenario. Detection, processing, intercept sequencing, and counter-strike sequencing, operating as a single integrated process before the adversary's first missile had reached its target altitude. The IRGC had modeled a genuine vulnerability. The vulnerability was real. What was not in the model was the depth behind it. The system they struck was not a collection of platforms. It was a process. And processes, unlike platforms, do not run out of interceptors. They redistribute, adapt, and continue. 61 minutes. That was the interval between the first motor ignition in the Zagros Valley and the completion of Operation Iron Register's primary sequence. In those 61 minutes, 14 years of development were reduced to entries in a damage assessment database. The database was classified. The interval was not.